My name in Spanish is César Augusto Pizarro. In the United States, it is César Pizarro, and I was born in La Víbora, Havana, Cuba.
What was your early life like in Cuba?
I came to the United States in 1961. Before that, I went to a Catholic school. I came as a teenager to the United States. I mean, I had just turned 17 when I arrived in Miami in 1961. So Cuba, I lived in a neighborhood there you could not see, I was not aware of all the things that you hear today about Cuba before Castro. All right? Batista, the dictator, was a lot more benevolent than Fidel Castro and his pandilla of, whatever they're called. So I went to Belén in Cuba. I did not graduate. I came to the United States, and my family, I didn't make the decision. Sorry. I didn't make the decision to come to the United States because I was underage. But my family, my mother, I had lost my father when I was 10 years old. So she made the decision to send me to the United States. And I came here through Pedro Pan, and I came by myself. I did not have to go through what a lot of the other Pedro Pans had to go through because my sister was already in the United States and she picked me up. So my life in Cuba before Castro was peaceful. It was loving. My family was middle class, and I never encountered any of the situations with the revolution or the dictatorship of Batista. I didn't go through that at all. I had a very good life growing up in Cuba.
Your father passed away when you were 10. How did you guys live? Did your mother work? Tell me a little bit about
No, my mother did not work. And, I had a big family. My father had 4 other brothers. And, he had a pension when he died. And he was a district attorney in Havana. So we were able to live a comfortable life until 1961 or 1958.
Tell me about you were older enough when you left, and you were in 58. You were 16.
I was 15.
You were 15 in 1958.
Well, 14 because I turned when I came in August.
So tell me about that moment, the moment of the Cuban Revolution, and what life was like in living as a teenager and the change that was happening.
When I left in 61, he arrived January 1st, 1959. So in those 2 years, he talked about, I'm not a communist, we believe in bread for everybody. We believe in the agricultural revolution in Cuba and so on. So when I left right after the Bay of Pigs invasion. And I didn't have to go through Russian meat, Russian cigarettes, all of the things that a lot of people had to go through. And so I didn't really experience any of that. And I remember the Catholic school that I went to, it was intervened by the government in December of 1960. So from December until I came to the United States in August of 1961, there was no school. I used to play a lot of squash and tennis and things like that, with my other friends. And that's the experience that I had, when the revolution came in.
Be mindful of your shoes because it will pick up the noise of stomping your feet. Um, Tell me, I mean, as you said, you didn't. The decision to leave wasn't yours; it was your mother's, um, and it was very early on in the revolution, and things didn't seem as bad. But tell me a little bit about what prompted your mom to send you to the U.S. and tell me a bit about that journey and that departure.
Okay. I was involved in Cuba with the Catholic youth organizations. That was one of the reasons that she was a little concerned about what would happen to me. But my family, they saw what was coming, and at the time they were looking at if you became like 17 years old, you would have to serve in the army, or you would have to go to the encampments around the country to help the revolution. So she saw what was coming, and I came to the United States not as an immigrant. I have never considered myself an immigrant. I consider myself a political exile, and that's when I got to Miami. That's what I told the guy from the CBP, that I was seeking political asylum in Miami, in the United States. So there's a difference. The mentality of coming to the United States, if you're an immigrant or if you are political exile. I really did not, my family did not have the need, to send me to the United States. I came here, they brought me here, or they sent me here looking for freedom, looking for liberty, and a quick return. Because we always, in Cuba, before Castro, we depended on Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam was going to save us again. And, the Bay of Pigs didn't go well. Then I was already in Miami when the missile crisis happened in 1962. And as we saw that, I said, my God, I don't think they were going back anytime soon. We came here thinking that in 6 months, a year, we would be back in Cuba. And it's been now 63 years, that we've been waiting or still trying to figure out how to go back. And I assimilated very well to the United States, but still I have. I think about Cuba in a sense that I really would have liked to see a Cuba without a revolution. What it would be like, and I look at pictures of, for example, Iwo Jima, when the Second World War, and how they have been able to rebuild the city. So Havana, what you see in Havana right now is what was there in 1958. All those beautiful buildings that the people want to go see, blah, 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 and so on. That was there. But coming here, let me go back to leaving Cuba. I went to the airport with my mother. She was the only one that was able to go in. And I went into what was called the fish tank, La Pecera. And the fish tank, right, when you were going to leave, you were going there, and nobody else could go in there. But there was you could see the persons on the other side. So I saw my mother crying. they put me into a room and they wanted for me to take my clothes off and so on. So that was tough, looking at my mother, and I didn't know how long it would be before I could see her and my other sister, who was in Cuba still. And so getting to Miami at the time, in 1961, the Freedom Tower was not the Cuban Refugee Center. It was on Fifth Street, Northeast Fifth Street, and I think Miami Avenue. That's where it was. So that's where I got, and I came with a box of cigars, and I brought something else. I forgot what it was, which I sold. They gave me $13 when, my sister was waiting. Oh my God, we were happy, to see me. We were crying. It was a sentimental thing, getting here. And so we lived, my sister, her husband, who had been in the invasion of Bay of Pigs, Mariel, they were here, they had a little girl. So we went into an apartment in what we called at the time La Sabuesera, Southwest, I think it was on 5th Street and 9th Avenue, something like that. And that's where we lived for a while. Then we had other people coming from Cuba. At one time in this small apartment, it was a one-bedroom, we were like 10, sleeping there. And I remember I slept in a sofa with a cousin of mine that came from Cuba. So we had to arrange every night, well, how are we going to sleep tonight? And so on. So when I came, the one thing that you're that young, you don't realize at that point the trauma. Very traumatic to leave your country, to come to a country where my English was very basic. See the cat on the table, Mary's a girl, Tommy's a boy, that sort of thing. So learning, by the time you have to learn the customs, you have to learn the language. So I went to Miami Jackson because I had to finish high school. I had not finished in Cuba. So I went to Miami Jackson. Then we moved to Miami Beach. So I went to Beach High, and I was there at Beach High. And talking to the people and the girls, it was very difficult, to communicate with them. And it's funny because in Spanish, you say tú. So you would say tú, meaning you. So I would translate that to tú me gustas. You like me. But it was not the right thing. So they would look at me like, who is this guy? So that was part of the learning process of the English language. And so I finished high school and I worked at a hotel in Miami Beach as a beach boy. The Raleigh Hotel, still there, 18th and Collins, I think it is. So I worked there until from 64, 65, somewhere in there. And then I got drafted in the Army. And I went to the Army for a couple of years. That was a very good experience for me, being in the Army for those 2 years. I was able to really learn more English. As a matter of fact, there I became a translator for a group of Puerto Ricans that came to the same Fort Jackson, in South Carolina. So that was a process. So my 2 years, I didn't have to go to Vietnam. My first, the what they call the MOS, which is the training that you're going to receive or in the Army. I was in a chemical warfare platoon, so that's what I learned, chemical warfare and so on. Then they deactivated the company, and so I went to school to be a personnel specialist in the Army. So I was there for until 60, so from 65 through 67, I was in the Army. Came back to Miami, didn't want to really do anything. I mean, my life at the time, it was like confused, what am I going to do now? I'm here. I had several jobs before. Then I got married too. So I realized that I needed to do something with my life. And I used the GI Bill to go to school. So I went to Miami-Dade, I went to FIU, graduated from FIU. I was 30-something years old when I graduated, finally got my degree in business administration with a major in marketing. And so I said, well, I'm here. So now I got to find me a good job because I got to take care of the family and so on. So went out, got a job at the Miami Herald. And little did I know that I was going to be there for 34 years. So I became what was called a district manager.
Before we jump to the Herald, I think obviously 34 years is a big part of your career. Tell me about that moment, I guess, when you're getting back here and you're figuring out what to do. You get married. Tell me about your wife and starting a family. You're 21 at that time?
No, I was 25.
25, okay.
25. I went into the Army when I was in 1963. I was 20. Came back. I worked, had different jobs. Met my wife back then. High Ally was a big thing here in Miami. So I met my wife at High Ally one night. And so we started going out, and so on. And then we got married in 1969. So 69, my first son, was born in 1971. So in the meantime, I had different jobs, small jobs, made enough money to take care of the rent, the food. I had a car. Back then it wasn't like it is today, with how expensive it is to live today. So my wife also had a job, my ex-wife. She passed away, my ex-wife. So we were there. She also went to school, became a psychologist. I became a professional in marketing and so on. And so then I started working at the Herald in 1974.
Were you at the Miami News first?
I want to tell you about the Miami News because it's interesting. The Miami News was a joint operating agreement. So when I worked for the Miami Herald, I was, as a matter of fact, my first job at the Herald was as a district manager for the Miami News, which the Miami Herald managed through the joint operating agreement. So while I was doing the thing for the Miami News, I was actually working for the Miami Herald and getting my paycheck from the Miami Herald. So when I started, I was a district manager. Nice. I said, well, nice job, district manager. But district manager was taking care of the kids that were delivering newspapers. And so a lot of the times I had to deliver the papers myself. And I had to go out and collect the monies for the papers because the kid was sick, didn't feel like doing it, and so on. So I did that for, I don't know, for a couple of years. Then going through the ranks, I became so a district. Well, I'm sorry, I was an assistant district manager. Then I became a district manager. As an assistant district manager, I would replace the managers when they were off, their days off. When they were on vacation, I would take over their districts.
And this is in the circulation department.
In the circulation division of Miami News, yes. Then from there, in the Miami, became a zone manager, so I was in charge of district managers. Then through the years, then that was in, I don't know, 76, 77. Then I became a marketing manager for the Miami News. So we were selling, I was in charge of telephone sales and district sales of subscriptions to the Miami News. And
So what would that entail? Telephone sales and district sales. What did that?
telephone sales, I mean people calling at random, different telephone numbers, selling the Miami News, a subscription to the Miami News. That was the one piece of the action there. The other piece was kids selling door to door, subscriptions. So, and then what else? Doing promotions for the Miami News, different promotions, give away things for subscribers. We had a contest for subscribers. One of the contests was where we would, if I remember, we would do a social security number or the last 4 digits of a social, and if you matched it, you would win $500. That sort of thing. That's what I did as a marketing manager. Then after marketing manager, I became a. Can I check my note here?
Absolutely.
Because
I have here that after you were at the Miami News, your role evolved, but eventually you go into director of display ads at the Herald.
Yeah, well, I became so through the ranks, where I started the Miami News, I ended up as the circulation director of the Miami News. That was in 1985. So through the years, I had been going up at different levels. Became the circulation director, which was the top of the circulation department. But I had a tough job then, because that was a time that we started closing the Miami News. We started getting out of the joint operating agreement with the news, with Cox. Cox newspapers, they own the Miami News. So the deal was between Knight Ridder and Cox newspapers. So at the time, that's when I had to close the circulation division. Tough job to tell people that they were out of a job. It really impacted me when people that I knew for years at the Miami News, that I had to tell them, listen, I'm sorry, but you're out of a job. We're terminating all of the jobs in the circulation division, and then the circulation division of the Miami News went into the Miami Herald, under the umbrella of the Miami Herald, for about a year. And then in I think it was 88, when they finally closed the Miami News, terminated the agreement between Knight Ridder and Cox. That was tough. So I found myself without a job at the Herald in December of 1986 when I finished. As a matter of fact, they would joke with me and say, you did such a great job closing the Miami News that you close yourself out of a job too. But anyway, so after that, there was a man that I worked for at the Miami News, and Jim Carroll. He was the circulation director of the Miami News way before I got to that level. So he was the advertising director of the Miami Herald. So he came to me and says, Cesar, you got to come to work with me. And I said, Jim, I don't know anything about advertising. I don't know how many inches on a page. I don't know. I mean, selling, you'll do great. Don't worry about it. I want you to take over. There's something going on with El Miami Herald. That was the El Miami Herald, the Spanish newspaper. Not a Spanish newspaper. It was like a couple of pages in the Herald, and then became El Miami Herald. It was a little like 3 or 4 sheets of news and so on. So I want you to take over that and see what you can do. I said, okay, I'll give it a try. So that was in beginning of '87. So started working with a group of people at the Herald. One of those you're going to interview tomorrow, Sam Verdeja. Then we were doing all kinds of research. What are we going to do? So in 1987, November of 1987, we finally came out with El Nuevo Herald. Throughout all the months before November of 1987, we were always looking at what are we going to call this newspaper? What's going to be the name? So, La Mañana, El Diario de Miami, so all different kinds of names. So we finally came up with, well, listen, good or bad is El Nuevo Herald. So the New Herald. And so El Nuevo Herald caught on. And so that was the beginning of El Nuevo Herald. We made some mistakes in marketing when we put out El Nuevo Herald, and we said, let's take all of the Spanish names out of the telephone book, or we had a list of Spanish surnames with the address. And so what we did, we delivered the Spanish version of the Miami Herald, the Nuevo Herald, to these homes. And we got a bunch of complaints from people that said, listen, I don't speak Spanish, I don't read Spanish, and I don't want that rag. So we said, oh my God, that was a mistake. So then we started doing other things.
I wonder if you could just take a step back, though, before we...
Yeah.
Just getting to the launch of Nuevo Herald. Tell me a little bit about, first of all, how did that feel? You've been in this country since 61. The country is evolving in the years you're there, and all of a sudden you're in a major American city, very Cuban, but a very major American city. You're launching a Spanish daily newspaper. What's it? Think on the significance of that, and what inspired that creation.
The market, the demographics of the market. That's the reason that we came out with El Nuevo Herald, because we saw what was happening back in the 80s when I was at the Herald, the growth of the Hispanic market in Dayton Broward. So there was a need to reach that segment of the population with a product that they could read, that they could say, this is my own. This is something that I want to read. To me, it was my process of assimilation into the mainstream, because a lot of the presentations that I was doing back then, it was about the fact that anyone could come to Miami and live in one of the enclaves, Hialeah, Little Havana, Southwest, different areas. And you could live comfortably without having to speak English. You could deal with a lawyer, you could deal with a doctor, you can deal with the store guy. And so that's what said, we really need to do something. And I was proud of the fact that I was working in that area at the time, that I was asked to be part of the whole group of coming up with a Spanish publication for the Miami Herald. So I did that then for a few years with El Nuevo Herald. Then I got out of the Spanish. I went into, and I became the national advertising director of the Miami Herald Publishing Company. Under that, I had the Herald and I had a El Nuevo Herald. So we were doing both. So at the time, my responsibility was to sell both products nationally. So we would have to travel throughout the whole country, selling Miami as a gray market. So a lot of the presentation, that's where I got involved in with Madison Avenue and all the major ad agencies. That's where we would go to sell Miami, to sell the Miami Herald as the vehicle to reach the market, the competing with radio and television.
And this is in '98 when the papers are kind of
No,
separated.
no, that's we're not there yet.
Okay, okay.
That was I'm talking about the year 1990. That's 1990. When I got out of I left El Nuevo Herald, after El Nuevo Herald was launched, and I was there for 2 or 3 years. So in 1990, I became the national advertising director, and that's where I got involved into selling national. 89, I'm sorry, not 90, 89, I think it was. So anyway, so we would go out and sell nationally. And so we would position the market and the Miami Herald as a vehicle to reach that market. When I made presentations, I would make presentations in New York, Chicago, LA, with non-Hispanic agencies and non-Hispanic people. So I always introduce myself as César Pizarro, blah, 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 from the Miami Herald, and then I would say, you notice that I have an accent. And I like to tell you why I have this accent. And the people say, yeah, why? I say, well, when I came to the United States, I used to watch television so I could pick up the language. And I used to watch I Love Lucy, and I picked up Ricky's accent. So that would break the ice. So they would not hear the accent anymore after that. So I did that for a few years until after Andrew. I mean, that was a devastating thing for Miami when Andrew was here in 1992. Then I left the Miami Herald, the national advertising director, and I became, on the retail side, I was one of the retail directors. On the retail side, retail meaning local businesses, small local businesses, the bird eyes of the time, at the time, Macy's, Nordstrom. So we were selling the major accounts, and I was in charge of the major accounts group, where they were selling the advertising to the major advertisers of the newspaper. So that was I was there for till about 98, doing the retail side. Then I became the classified advertising director of the Miami Herald. And I was in charge again of Miami Herald, El Nuevo Herald, all of the classified advertising, included classified sales, selling a car. It was real estate, it was employment, and it was automotive. So those 4 groups is what made up the classified advertising for the Herald, which generated a lot of revenue for the Herald. And so I was there for a couple of years. And at the time, I'm sorry, I gotta go back to 96. Sorry about that. In 1996, there was a new publisher that came to the Miami Herald. His name is Alberto Ibarwen. And so I worked with Alberto, again, on the Spanish side. He called me, said, we're going to work together. And I worked with Alberto in the total separation of El Nuevo Herald from the Miami Herald. Because El Nuevo Herald, before then, it was sold as part of the Herald. So in 1997, I worked with him in 96. In 1996 through 1997, we were selling that internally, that we had to separate the two products. Why? More revenue. There was a market for that product again. So we finally separated totally El Nuevo Herald from the Miami Herald, and it sold on its own. Advertising was sold as a combination. So we would go and make presentations about, combining the two gave you a lot more coverage of the market, more penetration into the marketplace. So that's what we were selling. So this paper is 25 cents, I forgot, 30 cents. This one is 50. So now you combine the two. Now you have people buying both products. So it made sense at the time. So I did that until from 96 to 98. At this point, I would say to myself sometimes, I'm either very good or I'm not good at all, because I keep getting all these different jobs. So I always think positively. I say, well, I'm good, man, doing what I'm doing. So in 1998, I got a phone call from the publisher of the publication and told me, I need you to go into classified. So in the year 1998, I became the classified director of the Herald until the year 2000. In the year 2000, I took control as they called it at the time forgot what it was, the manager of the Spanish publication. And so the product was El Nuevo Herald. We also had an international edition that was sold in Colombia, several countries in South America. And so we had other products. So I became in charge of El Nuevo Herald in 96 to 98. Then I became the classified advertising director. And then I became the general manager of El Nuevo Herald in the year 2000. So in the year 2000, I created a group of a sales force to go out and sell advertising just for El Nuevo Herald, because at the time it was only sold combined. So we created a sales force, got a couple of sales managers. I got a supervisor of a sales group within the Herald. Then I was working on that, and then later on, let me check my note here. It's incredible how much you forget about. 2008, international work for Alberto Ibarra, when the separation created a sales team dedicated, classified. Okay, then I became business manager. That's what they called it at the time. A business manager, general manager of El Nuevo Herald. And then later on, 2006, I became a vice president of the Miami Herald, in charge of Spanish, and I would go out and position El Nuevo Herald with all of the sales force at the Miami Herald. So I would go to different areas, and this is how you sell it, this is how you position. We did training for the sales force about selling the combination of the two products. Again, it was a new generation of salespeople at the Herald, so you had to train them. And then I did that. I was part of the the executive committee of the Miami Herald until I retired in 2008 from the Herald. And so that was my career at the Miami Herald in a nutshell.
Well, I mean, first of all, a lot of different roles in the Herald, and seeing the Herald through a lot of, not just the Herald, seeing local media through a lot of massive changes.
Yes.
I wonder if we could kind of take a step back in time here a little bit. Can you talk to me a little bit about kind of the significance of, well, first of all, the first idea, the challenge of selling Miami. You became national sales director. You said it's 89?
88.
88. Miami has just gone through the riots in the early years, the Mario boat lift, the drug wars. 1986, Miami was the murder capital of the world, cover of the Times Magazine. I mean, it was a rough image to be selling. What did you encounter, and not as cosmopolitan as the city, at least not thought of as cosmopolitan as the city as we might be thought of today. What did you encounter when you were going out to sell the image of Miami?
Well, first of all, like all good politicians, we never talked about those things. So, but we would bring it up. I mean, people asked, and we would say yes. I mean, we have challenges, and we're working on the different challenges to correct that situation. The 80s, it wasn't as bad as the 70s when they had the Colombian cowboys and all of that going on here in Miami, and early 80s. But it was rough. I mean, so you had to go through, and part of the presentation was how do we position Miami and all of these things are happening. So, but we did it. People understood that it wasn't the whole community. I mean, it was in certain areas of the city. It was a great experience. It taught me a lot about positioning a product. When I talked about El Nuevo Herald, or the Spanish, I mean, I was looked at as a Hispanic market guru back then, okay? This guy really knows. But I never said that I was a Hispanic. I always said, I know all of these things because I am a Hispanic market expert. Not because I happen to come from Cuba, not because I speak the language. It's because I was a marketing guy. I was a marketing expert on that segment of the population. And that helped me, taking myself out of that role as a Hispanic myself. So it was tough, but at the same time, we were successful. The Miami Herald back then was generating a lot of revenue. In 2007, I think I saw what was coming for newspapers. Because back then, even in the year 2000, when I was the classified advertising director, you already had online services for employment, for real estate, for automotive. So we were then not competing against radio and television, but radio, television, and online for dollars. And you could see that the revenue was starting to decline. And so, not that I wanted to escape or anything like that, but I thought it was time for me to move aside and let somebody else take over in the things that we were doing. So that's why I retired in 2008.
With the Miami Herald and the Nuevo Herald, it's also at some points it's had complicated relationships, particularly with the Cuban community, and I wonder how did that, when you were out selling the paper, right, selling the idea of you should invest in your ads in the paper, How did you deal with some of that? Did you get much pushback, and how did you deal with it?
Yes, we did. I was even called a communist, working for the Miami Herald. Oh my God, how could you do that? What's going on? But I even had to go on television a couple of times to defend the Miami Herald. One time there was a situation with the Herald and the Spanish radio, Cuban radio here in Miami, that the editor of the Miami Herald, Tom Fiddler, great person, wonderful individual, he had a meeting. The Spanish radio was going after the Herald for different reasons, blah, blah, blah. And he had a meeting internally. And he called Cuban radio is like chihuahuas biting your feet. That went out. So one of the things that I did internally to try and relax the whole situation, I had in my office, I put a sign outside that said, I am not a Chihuahua, I am a Havanese. So I would say, take it to a level. And there I had to go. There was a lot of cancellations for El Nuevo Herald. People were very upset. I had to go on the television to talk about the cancellations, and so I addressed that with the publisher of El Nuevo Herald. I went out with him, and so we had a program where we talked about the whole thing. At the time, not only that was happening, but we also had a commissioner that took his life right in the lobby of the Miami Herald. That created another controversy at the paper. At that time, I also got involved with the publisher. How do we, solve the whole situation? What was happening? So I saw myself not only selling, but also how do we correct the situation, being out in the community.
A lot to do. It's kind of wearing a lot of different hats.
A lot of different hats.
I want to jump. You leave in 2008. You saw kind of what was coming. Be mindful of time for us. You saw what was coming, and it's time to retire. But it seems like you've always worn a lot of different hats in life, regardless. I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about your involvement in the United Way and in Kiwanis Club.
That was many years ago. The Kiwanis of South Miami, it was a Hispanic Kiwanis. I was there for a few years. I was the treasurer of one point in that club, but then it became deactivated, or we stopped doing things. That was in the mid '80s, or more or less in the mid '80s. United Way, I was a believer in United Way. As a matter of fact, all executives of the Miami Herald had to give to United Way. I mean, that was a given. So we all did, but we believed in the cause. Why we would have to give. I'm a believer in that you have to give back to the community. And today I give back to the community in ways that I can. So that's important to me. And that was the training back then. I mean, that's, when you look at life and you look at corporate America, I mean, that's the best training that you can get in your life too, the way you look at the world and so on. So to me, that was, I'm grateful that I was able to go through the whole experience myself. Now I can tell you about my involvement with facts about Cuban exiles. I've known the guy that was the creator of FACE, Sam Verdeja. I've known Sam since 1972. I used to work with him at the Herald. Then he gave me, he worked at the Miami News. I replaced him as the Miami News circulation director, Sam Bereja. I knew that he was working on creating Face back in '82, and Face was created because of the negative impression that people had of the people that were coming through Mariel. That's the reason that Face was created. That was the mission of Face, was to how do we create a positive image of what's happening. And still today, I mean, you still have Face. I was the chairman of Face myself back in around 2002, 2003. So I've been with Sam, in Face, since about 2002 to 2003. I was a chairman. Then there were people inside Face that wanted to do away with Face, and it's time to do away with it. Sam and I, we didn't think that it was the right thing to do, that it had to continue with the new generation so they would know, the history of the Cuban exile community. So that was my involvement with Face. I was with Sam. Sam was, and Guillermo Martinez, who was also a newspaper guy, a journalist, were the ones that created the first book of Cubans: An Epic Journey, which is a book by that Face. So my job with that was I had to go out and get the money. So we went out and got sufficient funds for Sam and Guillermo to write the book. We paid some of the people that wrote certain chapters, but most 90% of the people that participated in the different chapters of the book were pro bono. Did not charge. But if you saw, my job was, I was a treasurer of the guy in charge of the book, paying the people, getting the money, paying the printer, so I had to go out and get a printer. All of that, that was my job at the time with that book, because I was the chairman. And then that book really saved Face. That kept Face moving in the right direction. We were able to bring back, because Face was inactive for about 10, 11 years. And those years I was working with Sam in how do we recreate it, or how do we bring it back. So I was involved with him. So I worked closely with him in 2009 when I started, 2010, when he started with the idea of the book. And so, but before then, can I go back?
Absolutely.
When I retired, a couple of people came to me to do some consulting. One of the consulting that I did was a small publication in Broward, small Spanish publication, Colombian publication in Broward, and I did some things for them. And then I said, there's nothing else that I can do for you. I mean, it's up to you guys now. I gave you the basics. Now go out and do it, blah, blah, blah. Then I got a call from Diario Las Americas, which was bought by a group from Venezuela, Meserani. And they bought Diario Las Americas, so in 2000, I think it was 2013, 14, somewhere in there, they called me and they wanted me to come, so I did consulting for them for about 2 or 3 years, positioning Diario. But again, I told them it's going to be a rough ride because newspapers are not what it used to be. So now people are getting their news from different sources. And the worst part about what's going on today online is that there are no editors. So there's no one to edit the news. So you have a bunch of bloggers out there putting out information that you don't know if it's true or not. And, Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, all of these things. So, and it's funny because I get a lot of those things myself, and I said, what are they thinking about? I mean, so I'm able to surf or to navigate to all of that. And I really, there's a few sources that you need to say, this is a respectable source, this is a good source for news and information, and these are not. So that's going on a lot, and it has impacted the newspaper. The only serious newspapers right now are the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and the New York Times. And those have always been considered national newspapers. Back then when I was at the Herald, there were national newspapers. So that's it's a shame what's happened to a lot of the newspapers. So, but anyway, going back to FACE, I'm an active member of FACE, part of the board, and
I wonder if this is a good moment, and I want to be mindful of our time together too. What do you think the biggest, specifically connected to FACE, what do you think that the biggest misconception about the Cuban exile community is?
The misconception.
Or I'll put it to you a different way. What is the most important thing you want people to know about the Cuban exile community?
I think that people need to realize that we left a country that wasn't that bad before the revolution. And really there was no need for a revolution like the one we had. I think that I want people to know that we, the generation of the 60s that came here, we were well prepared. Yeah, we had to go to a school, a university, and we were able to provide expertise in different areas as Cuban exiles. Some people think that we are obnoxious because of the things that we have been able to accomplish. Not only Miami, throughout the whole country, throughout the world. There are Cubans everywhere. But what I want them to know is that we came and we are very respectful and thankful of the United States of America for giving us an opportunity to come here, to find freedom, and to be able to participate in the progress of Miami, the country. You have Cuban Americans that are part of the U.S. government, federal government, Mallorcas, Gascon. They're ¿cómo se llama este? Rubio, Ted Cruz. So we want to be able to be part of the American dream. We want to be able to, of American culture. And so we were not what people think we are. We were better than that.
I think we have time for one more question, and I think that's it's a perfect kind of segue from where you're at, and that is talking about the American dream.
About what?
The American dream. Tell me what is the American dream, and what has your American dream been?
The American dream is to be able to become part of the mainstream. Because when I came, I was part of the enclave. I was looking at it in a small world. So I was able to look at the bigger world, the mainstream United States, and I wanted to assimilate to that world because I saw opportunities that I would not have in my little world of the enclave. So the American dream is reaching your full potential. You're giving the tools to become successful. And it is up to you to reach that success. No one is given to you, you cannot take anything for granted. No one's going to give you anything. When I was starting at the Miami Herald, I knew that I had to be better than Ralph Smith. I had to do better than Ralph so I could get the next job. Because we are competing. We're competing for the promotion. We're competing for improvement within the company. So the American dream is a realization of your goals. What are your goals? What are your aspirations? And so what you aspire to is what the American dream is about. And if you can reach that goal that you set for yourself, my home, my kids, they're able to get better jobs, they're able to get an education. Those are all the things that the American dream is about. It's not about having $3 in the bank. It's about you, your life, not the material things, but the things that unite the country. That to me is the American dream.
Amazing.